Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully everybody can hear me. If you are hearing me, please just acknowledge that you are. So welcome to this topic that we will be discussing today, which is relevant to COVID-19 and its environmental impact. And what I would like to do is start this talk by giving you an overview of some of the important things that can happen as a result of this pandemic that occurred on the planet. So as you probably know, one of the positive impact of COVID-19 was the reduced pollution that we observed throughout the globe. And what I would like to start with is a good example of our doing around the planet. So as humans, we tend to destroy ecosystem to make room for agricultural practices and make room for our cities. And the issue with that is, as we are cleaning more and more ecosystems, we are leading to a problem with respect to habitat loss and biodiversity. This photo that you see here is from the Amazon, and you can see they've cleared out lots of the Amazon to make room for agricultural practices, mainly planting soybeans so they can sell to China. So the fact that we are destroying these forests, these ecosystems, we are building roads, we are hunting into these areas, we can leach a number of different problems, because there are some viruses, there are some microorganisms, there are some plants and animals that live in these areas. And as you destroy their habitat, as you destroy them at the same time, you are leading to some emerging diseases that will occur throughout the planet. So not only that, another issue we have is living in these areas, the only source of meat for people living in this area is something called bushmeat. And the problem with bushmeat is the fact that you're not going to hunt the animals and eat them, and that can lead to problems. I don't know if you can see what's on the right-hand side here. You can see a good example of tribes in Africa sacrificing animals basically to get their everyday need of meat. The problem with that is this is how the disease is being transmitted from animals to us humans. And the other dimension of the problem is the fact that we live in cities. So the issue with living in cities is you have more chances of diseases propagating. Not only that, in the cities that we live in, we have animals, we have pets, we have rats, we have all different types of animals, and that will also encourage the transmission of these diseases from the wild to us humans. So again, as you can see, it's a major issue, and we can see that it's a major issue worldwide, because if you look at what we have here on the first image, you can see there's lots of threatened habitat throughout the globe, and they can range from mild to severe threatened habitat. And by threatening these habitats, by destroying them, by harvesting the animals in them, we are leading to severe problems, and we are leading to vectors and to diseases coming from these animals and coming and harm us. What you can see here is an example of a poster that I picked up from Wuhan in China. And basically, this is trying to tell the Chinese population that the animals, the wild animals, are your friends, they're not foods. And that's a problem in Asian countries because they look at wild animals as a source of food for them. So that's a good example of a promotion by the Chinese government trying to tell the residents that, these animals are your friends, you shouldn't consume them. And also you have a similar problem that you can see here in Papua New Guinea. This is a stall on the side of the road where they can sell bush animals, and you can see part of the things they sell are bats and other types of bush animals. The problem with that is these are poor people, and they go and hunt in the forest, and by hunting in the forest, by catching these animals, they can sell them for bushmeat. What we mean by bushmeat, living in these areas, you don't have any access to butchers, so basically you depend on wildlife that you capture and you kill to sell for bushmeat. And similar problem is throughout the globe, not only in China. What you can see here is an example from a fish market in Congo, where you can see basically that in Congo they have a high dependency on bushmeat, a high dependency on capturing and eating wildlife. And you can see here a good example of apes and other types of wildlife that they capture basically to eat. Not only they eat them, plus by capturing wildlife and selling it, they have a way basically to get their meat and also a way to make money, because by selling them, they can make money for their families that live in the bush. So again, that's a major worldwide problem that's not only endemic to China, to Wuhan, it's throughout Asia and in some of the African countries, which is a major issue. In Lebanon also, we have similar problems that are occurring. As you can see here, that's a good example of what's happening in Lebanon. In Lebanon, we tend to basically hunt wild animals. We tend to kill birds of prey, different types of birds, and even like some pigs and other types of animals. And that's a major issue because these are potential targets. These are potential vectors for diseases to come from the animals to humans. Especially that we are reducing the habitat of these animals, and they are restricted in the way they can hunt. So they are really high risks with respect to potential diseases that they can carry and be transmitted to us. Plus, in Lebanon, as you probably all know, we don't have proper laws and regulation to regulate hunting. So probably a hunter can shoot in excess of 1,000 birds every time they go out, and we see hunters that are as young as 10 years old, and all this can trigger significant problems of diseases, of bacteria, of viruses that can move from the animals to us humans. Okay, what I have for you guys is a video now that I will play showing you how the whole thing started in Wuhan and how there was a transmission of the disease from animals in this Wuhan market to us humans. So it's only a 3-minute video, so I will play that, keep quiet for 3 minutes, and look at your comments on the chat box. So what we can see here are animals that are being sold in Chinese markets. And you can see some wild animals that are being sold on the market. You have experts that are talking about the different ways moving the viruses from animal population to human. The risk of infection from eating meat coming from wildlife. And that's one of the animals that led basically to the COVID-19 that's still being sold in China. You can see here civet cats. These are the animals that triggered the Ebola virus. And you can see the SARS. So these are the animals that triggered that. They're still being sold in China. Okay, I think you got the gist of it. So basically, the reason we have this problem in Wuhan was because it was a wet market, where basically they have animals in cages. They sacrifice the animals, and by sacrificing the animals and eating them, they have basically spread this COVID-19 virus into the community. And as you probably know by now from the news, the virus makes people sick between 1 and 14 days after incubation. The symptoms are fever, coughing, tiredness, difficulty to breathe, etc. So it's quite a nasty virus that has attacked all the different countries around the globe. And here we're looking at, basically what we're looking at is we're looking at Johns Hopkins website, and it's trying to outline to you guys the different cases. So far, I think we've reached around 2 cases with confirmed cases in the US, Spain, Italy, France, Germany, ranging between 500,000 all the way down to 90,000. I'm sorry, I'm not going to take any questions now. I'll leave them till the end. But take-home message: it's a deadly virus that started in Wuhan, China, and spread throughout the globe. So what did government do in order to attempt to curb that from that virus? What they've tried to do is to have protective measures, social distancing, to try to limit the number of people that are infected. And by doing that, basically the medical facilities will be able to cope with the number of people that contract the virus. And you can see here the different graphs from Italy, US, Spain, Germany, and Britain. And you can see the US has basically gained momentum because they have delayed the measures that they needed to adopt to stop the spread of COVID-19. One of the positive effect of this pandemic basically is that they've grounded all the planes and they've grounded all traffic, lockdowns throughout the globe. Grounding the planes is a good thing because what it did, basically, it helped in reducing the amount of CO2 that's being released by these planes into the atmosphere. And you can see it's quite an interesting thing. There was around 10% lower emission with respect to CO2 emissions. So they've grounded the planes, and this led to reducing CO2 emission. This, together with lockdowns, stopping the cars, led to a significant drop in CO2 emissions. Of course, you have always cases where people try to go around this lockdown. This is an example of people trying to come from UK, which was under lockdown, to Nice to spend a few days in the sun. Obviously, the French police caught them, and they sent the private plane back to Germany and to UK and prevented those people from coming in. So lockdown is a serious matter that's being taken on board by all the different countries where Corona has basically been identified. So what can you do to protect yourself? Probably you've seen all this. What I want to mention and I want to focus on is the social distancing. And that has been really a thing in Lebanon, preventing people from interacting together. And this is one of the basic ways you can adopt to stop the spread of the virus. And these are examples of what can happen with or without social distancing. Without social distancing, each individual can infect up to 50 individuals. While with social distancing, what you can see here, you can see that if you implement social distancing and lockdown, the number of affected individuals will be lower, and therefore the medical facilities will be able to cope with these people, because these people will suffer from severe problem in their lungs. They will need ventilators, respirators, and there's limited amount of respirators around. And what you can see here, that's a good article that was produced by the graduate office at LAU. And basically, it's a study that indicated some modeling that extreme social distancing, like in the case of Lebanon, can save around 150,000 lives in Lebanon. So again, that works. Social distancing, staying at home, does work in curbing the virus spread. And again, if you look at worldwide, you can see different areas around the globe, different touristic destinations that are empty, ranging from the Pantheon in Rome all the way to Bologna in another city in Roma, Wuhan, in Paris. So this lockdown was implemented properly to stop the spread of the virus and limit the number of casualties that will require hospitalization. As I mentioned, one of the main benefits of this virus was on the environment. What we've seen is the environment that has basically managed to recover from our activities. This was the result basically of stopping our factories, stopping the use of our cars, which led basically to the reduction of pollutants in the atmosphere. So stopping the factories, stopping the burning of fossil fuels, and stopping industrial emissions, stopping transport emissions, motor vehicles, all this led to significant improvement in the air quality around the globe. And just to give you a perspective of what are some of the pollutants that we face pollutants coming from industries, from cars, and we face primary pollutants in the forms of NOx and SOx and O2s, SO2s, and secondary pollutants, which are basically the interaction of these primary pollutants with water molecules. That can lead, for example, to H2O2, ozone, H2SO4, etc. So these are the major pollutants that I will touch on very briefly. Nitrogen oxide, the problem with it, if it combines with water, you're going to get nitric acid, which is an acid. And this is a major contributor to acid deposition, killing plants, photochemical smog, and this has pollution from Wuhan. And you can see here quite an interesting thing. As a result of the problem that occurred in Wuhan, the shutdown of the city, you can look at level of NO2 gas, and from January 2019 all the way up to February 2020, you can see the whole city cleared up. The level of NO2 dropped all the way down because of the lockdown that was imposed by the Chinese government and basically stopping all the factories and preventing people from moving out. So that's one of the positive impact of this virus in clearing up the skies and dropping the level of pollutants. And to give you an example of how bad is the pollutant, I have a 3-minute video that I will play to you guys. I'll play briefly just to show you how bad is the pollution in industrial areas in China. Okay, so because there's no sound, I think I will skip that video, but basically you can see the air is thick with smoke. And the problem with that is it's affecting the health of people living in these areas. They suffer from respiratory problems. Even the kids that go to school, they have issues with respect to going to school because it blocks the sun. So there's no sun, there's no plants that will grow. So that's severe pollution that's occurring as a result of activity, of emissions from factories in China. And what you can see here, this is from Wuhan, actually the epicenter of that pandemic. You can see there's a clear distinction in the level of, or the quality of air that you see. That's after the Wuhan incident. You can see the weather cleared up, there's no more smog, and the quality of the air was significantly enhanced. One of the main problems, as we said, with the pollution is the fact that it will have acid rain, and acid rain will destroy things, will destroy structure. That's an example of a statue that has been corroded by acid rain. On top of that, it can have significant environmental impact, especially on plants. It will lead to the loss of their leaves. It can also have significant impact on leaching of soil nutrients like calcium, magnesium, and basically making the soil devoid of any nutrients. And as we said briefly, most of the important things that are coming from emissions from industries are from burning fossil fuels, mainly coals, cars being driven around, that lead to the formation of acid rain that we mentioned before. Another thing that will happen, all these pollutants, when they get hit by sunlight, you get photochemical smog, and that's one of the main things that happen in China, where you have many days during the year, especially in Beijing, where the quality of the air is so bad that you can't breathe properly, you can't see properly because of this photochemical smog, which is the result of interaction between the pollutants and sunlight. And another contributing factor to pollution is something called the inversion layer that we see here. So basically what happens in some countries, you get a layer of warm air that acts as a lid, and prevent the pollutants from escaping. And so the pollutants will start building up over the city and create a problem for residents of the city. And you can see it here, that's in San Diego, Chile. You can see a very significant impact of photochemical smog. And you can see how Chinese have adapted basically to living with photochemical smog through wearing different types of devices to protect them from the impact of smog. Again, there's a small video I'm not going to play, but this is from China. And this is looking at China now. This was taken, I think, a few days ago. And you can see clear skies, no more photochemical smog, because what happened basically, they've stopped their factories from producing animals. As we said, these components will get into respiratory systems and trigger a number of problems. And to put that into perspective, especially for old and young people, I know this is gross, but that's an example of a normal lung compared to the one that died of emphysema. So severe damages to the lung, and these people will have problems in taking a breath. Now we look at the positive environmental impact of COVID-19. First of all, we've stopped emissions, we've reduced emissions. Also, we've reduced all the travel to hotspots, like here in Spanish Steps in Italy. So no more tourists, no more pressures on systems, no more traffic, no more emissions from traffic. And this is from New York. You can see empty streets. And we can tell by using satellite data, mainly the 5P Sentinel satellites that are going around the globe, that the levels of pollutants have dropped significantly. And here what we can see, first of all, in France, you can see, before we get to that, you can see here in France, what we have seen is before and after. You can see the level of NO2 pollutants have significantly decreased. Also, if you play these videos here, this is on top of Italy. You can see that from the satellite, the level of NO2 is dropped as a result of the lockdowns, as a result of shutting down transport and the types of industries. And if you look over China too, you can see the same thing happening here. This is over China before in December and around March. You can see from the satellite there was a significant drop in the level of NO2 pollutants. So one of the positive impact of having this COVID-19 on the environment. And also another example here, some examples from around the globe. You can see the air quality in Beijing, before and after, in France, before and after, and in Venice, before and after. And because of the lack of tourists, what happens? The canal started clearing up, and you can see some fish in the canal, some ducks. So the wildlife is starting to get back into these areas. So again, cities without humans are somehow good, and they tend to recover, and the air quality on these cities will improve significantly. This is an example from India. You can see this is before and after. India is heavily industrialized, and basically they made a big effort to stop the dispersal or the invasion from COVID-19. And they've even went one step further by locking people indoors in their houses to stop them from getting out, because they've noticed that people are breaking the curfews and getting out. So again, you can see a clear, distinct improve in the air qualities in these cities. In Lebanon too, we have adopted a curfew type of mitigation. So people have been ordered and asked to stay home. They've put on some roadblocks. Even the government started implementing different measures to stop the spread of this virus. So again, what you can see in Lebanon, we're seeing a drop in the levels of NO2. And this is again from the satellite. This is in January 2020 over Lebanon. You can see large amount of NO2 gas all over Lebanon because of emissions from car, industrial activities, etc. And if you look at the same satellite in March 2020, you can see it all cleared up. And now we have very nice clear skies over the cities. Also, another important thing that happened in Lebanon, the level of PM2.5 and PM10, the small particles that we see in the air, has significantly dropped, and this has significant impacts on the livelihood of people with asthma and that suffer from respiratory problems. And you can see it here clearly. That's before COVID-19 and after COVID-19. The city skyline is clear, and all the pollutants have dropped significantly. So that's a problem in Lebanon we have with respect to air pollution that you can see here. First of all, there's lots of old cars on the road, and there's lots of traffic jam that contributes significantly to the levels of NO2 pollution. So this is This is a photo of NO2 pollution over the city of Beirut. And what you can see here, you can see that over the city of Beirut, the level of NO2 was significantly high before this COVID-19 problem that occurred. So we have issues in Beirut with respect to, as I said, the number of old cars on the road that are contributing basically to significant problems in levels of NO2. And also this is a study done by Khalil et al., where they correlate basically the level of pollutants and the number of cancers. And we can see because of the pollution we have in Lebanon, the cancers that we have in Lebanon have increased significantly. So to give you an example, the level of PM 2.5 has increased over the years and is now around 200%, between 150 to 200% higher than what's recommended by the World Health Organization. And if you also look at nitrogen oxide, our levels are around 58 milligram per meter cube, which is by far higher than the recommended 40 milligram per meter cube by the World Health Organization. So again, we pay a heavy price for this pollution in Lebanon. Also, if you reduce the pollution and you have early diagnosis of cancer, you tend to live longer. You can see this on the slide. So again, some of the people that will benefit from this lockdown are all people that have respiratory diseases, because the chances of survival will go higher as a result of lower levels of small particulate matter in the atmosphere. It's a problem worldwide. This is from the US. You can see there's a clear problem in the US. The number of people that die each year is around 3 million deaths per year. And again, the EPA, at least in the US, they have guidelines on what you can emit into the atmosphere. In Lebanon, we don't have that. We have, on top of what they have in the US, we have generators that run on diesel, and all this can trigger a number of different problems with respect to health issues. Again, so what do you think? Will COVID-19 save the planet? I will ask you this question towards the end of this webinar. Well, it's doing some good for the planet, because we can see that wildlife is starting to come back to our cities. This, you have wild boars coming in Barcelona, some ducks walking around in state of Paris, dolphins along the French coast, puma in San Diego, Chile, in the cities hunting for food, and deers in Japan. So again, nature is quite good and is trying to reclaim areas in the city. So that's the positive side of nature reclaiming and coming back into the city. The negative side is what you can see, the result of intensive spraying. So we've seen wild animals dying as a result of exposure to these spray. The bees are disappearing too because they're being poisoned. And around Wuhan, we've seen around 17 species of animals, including wild boar, weasel, and blackbirds, that are dying as a result of this spray. Another negative side of this lockdown of the COVID-19 is the fact that in cities where people are no longer eating, rats are starving. They can't find any food, so they've basically resorted to being scavenger. So we have these rats that are attacking each other. They're cannibalizing each other because there's not enough food for them to go around. And we see this issue occurring in major cities, in New Orleans, in France, and other places. And basically, local government has stepped in to try to poison these rats to stop the transmission of diseases, because they can't find any food to consume because of the lack of people outside to eat. And this is also a problem in areas like Thailand, where they have street stalls, and the rats basically have adapted basically to eating leftover food from tourists. So again, these rats are basically reverting to cannibalism to survive. One of the other important things that led from this crisis is the fact that wildlife trafficking has dropped because of less transport between cities. So you can see lots of animals that have been trafficked before have, this has stopped for the time being, and that's a good side of the COVID-19 epidemics. So again, this is a good slide because it shows you what needs to be done as a result of this COVID-19 epidemics. We need to stop wildlife trade. We need to stop eating wild animals. We need to stop destroying their habitats so we don't unleash viruses that were locked in these habitats. And we need to have. But to give you a perspective, we as humans, we tend to have a good relationship with wildlife. Example from Australia, where you see that they're culling kangaroos to sell for wild bushmeat. Also another example from Africa where they're using alligator meat, and we can use also, we hunt deers and pigs for their meat. So we tend to depend on using wildlife in our diet, and this is a problem in the future because of the potential of vectors, potential problems of diseases, of microbes and viruses to move from these animals to us through our diets. Another important issue that I will touch on briefly because I think I'm running out of time. What we have, one of the main setbacks of this epidemic is the lack of food. This is the result basically of the interruption of the network of transporting food from the farmers to the consumers. Plus, on top of that, you have consumers which are stocking on food because they're scared that the food supply will run off. Again, in China, they managed to go around this by issuing the farmers with the incentives, money. They issue them with face masks and sanitizers by the government to help them in reducing the potential impact of COVID-19 on food supply in China. Again, that's working, but the poor farmers, they have a crop. If they don't sell the crop, basically the crop will get wasted and they will have losses. So again, that's one of the significant impacts of COVID-19. Okay, as a conclusion, what we can see some short-term benefits from the lockdown and travel restrictions. We can see, for example, in Venice, life coming back to the canals, blue water, some dolphins coming up, some swans. We can see tourist hotspots and cities have better air quality. We are seeing fewer pollution-related deaths. Maybe it's too early to say. Pollution levels are expected to get back to normal once everything, the shutdown is over and economies are restarted. We might not see a significant impact in cancer rates because that's something that's occurring over a large period of time because of the incubation time needed for the cancer. And again, once things resume, we're going to see CO2 levels that are back to normal. And this was observed previously in the 2008 financial crisis, where CO2 level were restored to normal after the crisis within 2 years. So if we don't do anything, we don't move from fossil fuels, we use renewable energy, we're going to end up with the same issues with respect to air quality worldwide. Okay, this is my last slide. Basically some questions. Should we go back to business as usual when the epidemics or the pandemic is over? Should we lower our emissions? Should we move to renewable energy? Will fighting climate change, of course, it's going to be on the back burner because the next important thing is for economies to restart. And there is a direct connection. This is an important point. There's a direct connection between rainforest ecosystem and viruses that we're going to see, because there were some studies done by the World Health Organization saying around 3/4 of the diseases we're going to see in the future will be carried by animals, by vectors. And there was a question on how long does it stay airborne. You can see it here on surfaces. It can stay up to 3 hours on surfaces, on money, and on other things. So it's important basically to sanitize your hands and wear protective equipment to prevent this virus from getting to you. Okay, that's it for me now. I'm going to stop and give the floor for any questions. I'm going to refer to the chat session. So if you guys have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer you. Any questions from the floor? Shabil, I can see we will never get back to normal. I think we've seen a number of epidemics or pandemics like this. We've seen the SARS, we've seen the Ebola, and now we have COVID-19. And probably we're going to see more things happening because of many factors. First of all, as I said, we're destroying the habitats, we're unlocking the viruses from their natural habitat. Plus, global warming is important because it can contribute to speeding up these things. COVID-19, is that man-made? Well, again, there are some theories saying that probably it was made by China as a bioweapon. Other people are saying, again, they're only theories. Some people are saying it was designed by the US to bring down the Chinese economy. But I personally think it's not man-made. It's something that has been locked into the environment as a result of eating animals which have been contaminated. We got exposed to it. To give you an example, the Ebola virus that emerged in Africa, it emerged basically from a group of villagers that killed a monkey and ate the monkey, and it was transmitted from the monkey to these villagers, and it basically went around the globe. So again, I think it's not, nothing is man-made. It's something natural that has been locked into the environment, and all of a sudden we made it available. Well, I think using the plasma from recovered patient and injecting it into infected one is a good question, because it might contain some antibodies that can help the patient in recovering. But I thought I saw an article the other day that mentioned that even patients who recovered from the COVID-19, they don't have any, they hardly have any antibodies in their blood. And that's of concern, because that will mean that we're going to have more delays in trying to come up with ways to deal with this pandemic. Okay, Basima, temperature will affect COVID-19. We don't know, because the COVID-19 is a really interesting virus, and it was also found in bats, and bats have this property where they can elevate their body temperature to very high temperature while in flight. And obviously, it lived in Bath even at high temperatures. So we might not see a decrease in the level of COVID-19 pandemic in the world as a result of hot weather. We don't know yet. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen. But I think maybe heat will have some impact in slowing down the virus, but it will not stop it. Any other question, guys? I'm looking through the questions. What will not go back to normal? I think we're going to have a severe financial crisis throughout the globe. Economies will crumble, and we're going to see a different landscape than the one we have now. Again, it's going to be a recession, I think, worldwide, and it's going to take probably a few years for us to get out of it. Yes, it originated from pangolins, and this was they say this is basically the result of this wet market in China, where they used to have these animals and they used to sacrifice them and sell them as bush meat or as meat for consumers. Well, I think what's going to happen in the future, we're going to get more and more of these viruses, as you said, because we are in an interesting environment. We live in cities, we have all these vectors. So we're going to see more and more of these pandemics occurring, especially we're going to see some more of these respiratory illnesses that will spread throughout the globe. Again, there are some different studies with respect to hydrochloroquine. Some studies are saying it's good, other studies are saying it's not that good. Again, it's too early to say, because we don't have the numbers needed to establish whether this drug is effective as a COVID-19 drug to fight. Yes, I would recommend doing analytic toxicology, Yervan. Oh yeah, they eat all kinds of animals, ranging from wild animals all the way down to domesticated animals. The cuisine in China is quite interesting. Well, airborne, it is controversial, because the virus will stay in the air, as I said, for up to 3 minutes. But the problem is, even if it lands on surfaces, it can stay for a few hours. So again, that's the problem. Transmitted from patient to patient, and transmitted from patient or from diseased individual to objects, and from objects to other individuals. I hope so. As I said, they have posters trying to advise people not to consume any wild animals. So hopefully there'll be a change in the habits. But again, bear in mind, in Chinese tradition, eating wild animals is some kind of aphrodisiac for some people. So some people will seek to buy these animals because they think they have some properties that will enhance, for example, their sexual life, etc. So it's something rooted in their culture. I think it's very hard for people to stop consuming these animals. Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump. The problem with Donald Trump and the US, they were a bit too slow in dealing with this virus. That's why they're having all these issues in New York. But I think there'll be new measures. I think the social distancing, wearing masks, like in China, it's a usual thing for people to wear masks while moving around. So we're going to see this occurring more often as a result of future pandemics that will occur. As I said, it stays in the air for probably a few minutes, unless somebody, Sarah, basically sneezes in your face, you won't get it, but it can go to surfaces and it can be transmitted from surfaces to you. Again, the issue is to have it into your respiratory tracts. You need to not to touch your nose or your nasal cavities to get the virus in. Yes, I think they should do that, and I think there was a good speech done by one of the American presidents saying that, guys, one of the next things we need to look at are these epidemics, pandemics. We need to invest into respirators, etc. But I think nobody listened to him, and now they're paying the price. Yes, I think we will all, at least 80% of the population will get the virus. The lockdowns are intended to basically to prevent a very rapid increase in the number of cases because we cannot cope with a very high number. I think from statistics, around 3 to 4% of the people that get the virus will die. So 4% is not much, but if you get 4% of people getting the virus at the same time, it will overwhelm your medical facility and you won't be able to cope with them. So that's what happened in Italy. Especially in Italy, they have an old population. So it attacked basically the elderly, and they had problems basically with coping with the number. That's why in Lebanon, we're trying to flatten the curve to reduce the number of cases so the medical facility can deal with them. Well, I'm not sure what we can do with the environment. I think the environment will pay the price because once we restart the economy, all these advantages we've seen with respect to drop in pollution, all this will be basically negated by, getting back our economies in action, getting back our fleet of cars, our planes. So we're gonna get back to where we were before. Well, I think maybe that's what will happen. We're going to get some new social way of interacting with people, maybe, better social distancing, wearing masks to stop the spreads of this, of future viruses that can occur. Yes, what will happen after the lockdown, Mirai Azar? Well, that's a good question because what we're expecting after when this is over, they're expecting a second and third wave of the virus that will hit. So again, the lockdown, as I said, is basically aimed at reducing the number of casualties so the medical system can cope with them. But eventually, I think 80% of the population on the planet will get it. How long will the lockdown in Lebanon take? God knows. Again, in Lebanon, we have an issue, I think. We don't have enough tests being conducted. So in some areas around Lebanon, they're not doing enough tests. So we still have some hotspots that haven't been detected as yet. In Lebanon, maybe we expect to see something back to normalcy. My personal opinion, probably not before July, August, before we can see a decrease in the number of cases that will warrant the lift of that lockdown that we have in Lebanon. So I assume with the hot weather, the number of cases will drop a bit, and we will see probably the lift of these lockdowns. Well, how to manage stress and anxiety with the pandemic. Miriam, I'm not sure. You need to basically not stay at home. I think one of the main problems with this lockdown is people are getting on their edges. We're going to see a very high number of divorces when things resume because of this lockdown of people with their kids, and we're going to see some tension that's occurring. By the way, please, guys, there's Miriam is having a talk for tomorrow. Please attend it. I think we'll have a summer semester, but it's going to be online, Yasmin. When you will be able to register classes, I'm not sure. They will, I think, advertise it on the website. Well, online education is what we're trying to do, and I think these seminars and use of platforms such as WebEx and this platform are quite useful as a tool basically to deliver knowledge and content and prevent the spread of diseases like this one. Yes, there's a session on stress management tomorrow, guys. If you want to attend it, please do. Oh, we're going to have high rates of divorces, definitely, because people are on their edges, they're locked in their places. Domestic violence against women, again, that's another issue. Again, if you lock people in together, you expect to see a very significant increase in rates. Great. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, thank you, guys. Thank you for attending. Hope you got something out of this webinar. You learn something about the benefits of this lockdown on us humans, and maybe we need to move away from current ways of driving the economies using fossil fuels to more renewables to save the environment. Take home message, the environment will recover. It can recover quickly, and hopefully, if we do the right thing, we can save the planet for the future. Thank you all. Thank you for attending, and looking forward to seeing you later. Thank you. Robin, you want to take over?
Yes, yeah, thank you. Interesting talk. Now, خليك معنا for a couple of minutes. Thank you, Laila. Thank you for everybody once again, and for bearing with us بالأول. تأخرنا 10 minutes.